This tiny speck, smaller than a grain of sand, would cost $62.5 trillion. One single gram of it is worth more than the economies of the United States, China, and all of Europe combined. It's real, humans have made it, and we'll get to what it is at the end. Everything has a price by weight, and once you start weighing things by the gram, the numbers get insane fast. So here are 8 materials, ranked by what a single gram costs, starting with one you already know, and climbing to something that basically breaks money itself. Let's weigh them. We start with the classic gold. Right now, 1 gram of gold costs around $130, and that price has rocketed up by roughly half in just the past year. Why is it worth so much? 2 reasons. It's genuinely rare. Every scrap of gold ever mined in all of human history would fit into just a few Olympic swimming pools. That's all of it, ever. And it never rusts, never tarnishes, never decays. A gold coin pulled from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck still shines like the day it was made. Rare and basically immortal, which is exactly why humans have used it as money for thousands of years. And notice the price already jumped 50% in a single year as nervous investors piled in. That's your baseline. Everything from here only gets stranger. Here's one hiding in your kitchen: saffron, the spice. Gram for gram, it's one of the most expensive things you can legally buy at a grocery store. So why is a plant worth this much? Because saffron isn't the flower. It's just 3 tiny red threads, the stigmas, inside each crocus flower. And they can only be picked by hand, 1 flower at a time, in a short window when the flowers bloom. It takes something like 150,000 flowers to make a single kilogram of saffron. Picture that. An entire field of flowers, everyone plucked by hand, tweezed apart by hand, just to fill 1 small bag of spice. Nobody has invented a machine that can do it. So the price isn't really about the plant at all. It's about the mountain of human hours buried inside every pinch. The labor is the price. Diamonds. Depending on quality, a gram runs from around $50 up into the hundreds and beyond. But here's the twist you might not expect. Diamonds aren't actually that rare. There are vast supplies of them sitting in vaults and in the ground. For most of the last century, a small number of companies controlled nearly the entire supply and deliberately released only a trickle at a time to keep prices sky high. Then they ran one of the most brilliant advertising campaigns in history. The one that convinced the entire world that a diamond ring is what love looks like, and that you should spend months of your salary on one. Before that campaign, diamond engagement rings weren't even really a tradition, so a huge chunk of a diamond's price isn't rarity at all. It's a story, sold so well that we now treat it as obvious. The stone is real. The scarcity and the meaning were largely manufactured. Now one almost nobody's heard of. But it might be in your car right now. Rhodium. At times it's cost several times more than gold per gram. Rhodium's job is to sit inside a car's catalytic converter and scrub the most toxic gases out of the exhaust before they hit the air. Almost nothing on Earth does it better. But it's one of the rarest metals in the entire crust. It isn't really mined on its own. It comes out as a tiny byproduct when you refine other metals like platinum. So the supply is minuscule, and with millions of cars needing it, demand is enormous. At its peak, it cost many times the price of gold. It got so valuable that thieves started crawling under parked cars with saws, cutting out catalytic converters in under a minute, just to sell the pinch of precious metal hidden inside. People were robbed of a car part most of them didn't even know they owned. Now, we leave the everyday behind. Plutonium, around $4,000 a gram, and you very much cannot buy it. Plutonium barely exists in nature. Almost all of it is made by humans inside nuclear reactors, essentially atom by atom, in a process that's difficult, dangerous, and controlled by governments. It sits at the heart of nuclear weapons, which is most of why it's so restricted. But it has a gentler side too. A special form of plutonium quietly powers deep space probes. The Voyager spacecraft, now billions of miles away in interstellar space, and the rovers on Mars, run on the steady heat plutonium gives off as it decays. It can power a spacecraft for decades where sunlight is too weak for solar panels. Rare to make, deadly to touch, and one of the most tightly guarded substances on the planet. This one is alive. Deathstalker scorpion venom, often called the most expensive liquid on Earth. A single gram can cost between $8,000 and $12,000, and by the gallon the numbers reach the tens of millions. Why so much? Because it can only be collected 1 scorpion at a time, by hand, and each scorpion gives up only about 2 milligrams of venom per milking, a droplet smaller than a grain of sugar. To fill a single gallon, you'd have to carefully milk scorpions millions of times over. It's slow, it's risky, and there's no machine that does it well. So why bother? Because hidden in that venom is a compound that can lock onto brain cancer cells and literally make tumors glow under special light, showing surgeons exactly which cells to remove and which to leave. One of the deadliest little creatures on Earth might end up saving lives. That's what you're paying for. Now the numbers stop making sense. Californium, a metal that doesn't exist in nature at all, costs around $27 million per gram. Humans make it by bombarding other already rare elements with particles inside a reactor for years on end, and even then you get almost nothing. The entire world only produces a handful of grams of it across whole years of effort. It's handled by the milligram, thousandths of a gram at a time, but a single tiny speck of it fires off a staggering number of neutrons every second, which turns out to be incredibly useful. It can kickstart nuclear reactors, and it's lowered down boreholes to find gold, silver, and oil deep underground by scanning the rock. Almost priceless, not because someone decided it should be, but simply because it barely exists at all. And now, finally, the speck from the very beginning. The most expensive material in existence, antimatter. Around $62.5 trillion for a single gram, a number so large it stops meaning anything. Antimatter is the mirror opposite of normal matter, and when the two touch, they annihilate in a flash of pure energy. It's the most powerful energy source we know of, but we can only make it in giant particle colliders, a few atoms at a time, and it destroys itself the instant it touches anything normal, so it can't even be stored properly. At the rate we currently make it, producing a single gram would take about 1 billion years. That's why it costs more than whole nations. It's not really a price you'd ever pay. It's a measure of just how far beyond everything else it sits. From a gram of gold you could hold in your palm, to a speck of antimatter worth more than the world's biggest economies put together. And notice what actually drove the prices. Sometimes it's pure rarity, like Californium. Sometimes it's brutal difficulty, collecting venom one scorpion at a time, or picking a field of flowers by hand. Sometimes it's danger and control, like plutonium. And sometimes, like the diamond, the price isn't really about the thing at all. It's just a very good story someone sold you, so well that you never questioned it. If your sense of what expensive means just got rearranged, hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments which price shocked you most and what I should weigh next.